Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, Maverick family. Welcome back to the Maverick News channel. Thank you for stopping by again on this Sunday night. What is it? It's August the 13th today. Lucky 13 on this fine August evening. And where I'm at, the weather is fine. I don't know what it's like where you are. I know it's been hot in a lot of places, and we are still dealing with the whole Hawaii, Maui wildfire situation. We'll talk about that this evening and the possible causes of that tragic fire, where the death toll continues to rise. We will talk about Ukraine, the Ukraine conflict, Russia, and propaganda. We will talk tonight also about the story that is front and center on our thumbnail, the lead story, if you will, this evening. We'll talk about the new Snow White movie from Disney. Snow White goes woke. And we'll just touch a bit tonight as well on the fallout from yesterday's Iowa State Fair visit by Donald Trump and Ron DesSantis. Lots of protesters. And if we have enough time, we'll also touch on UK citizens upset with Sadiq Khan for installing ultra-low emission zones. He has recognition cameras there to penalize people throughout London if you do not drive an electric vehicle. So all that and more coming up right here on the Maverick News channel. Don't go away. I will be right back.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
So we are broadcasting on all platforms tonight, at least a little bit on Facebook. We will not be sticking with the censorship platforms very long, though. We will get through some of the content that we're going to share with you tonight, and then we are going to flip over mainly to Rumble. We'll stay with Twitch and Odyssey and some of the others, but really Rumble is the place for everybody to go. So I will post the link in the chat for the Rumble channel. In fact, let me do that right now while we have a moment. And thank you, PDS, for the $5 donation there. It also sounds like maybe my microphone is not set up properly. So let me, I think maybe the settings are wrong. Let me just make a couple of quick changes here. I am going to put that in the chat, though. Here's the Rumble link. There you go. Let me take a quick break here while I adjust the microphone settings so that things sound better. Give me just a moment. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Still technical problems. Bear with me. I'll get it fixed.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let me, there's the camera. Let me just check this audio here. No, we'll run another promo. I'm still working on it. Sorry, folks. My apologies.
Exile. The Knights of Malta. Maverick News. Join us. The world is watching.
Still problems. I'll get it fixed. Hang on, let me just do this. I do apologize, doing my best here. Don't know what has gone wrong, but we will get it to connecting.
Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Okay, let me just check in the chat here. We're back, and that opener for the show is so great. We got to do it twice tonight. Can everyone hear the audio okay now? Is it a little bit cleaner? I suspect it probably is. Let me just listen. Yes, it is absolutely better. I can hear it on the rebound audio, so that's good. We're clean now, so that's much better. So again, we're going to touch on the Maui wildfire situation, the possible causes of that. We are going to look at the fallout from the DeSantis Trump Iowa State Fair visit yesterday. We have also a video that I think will run from RFK Jr., maybe if we have time. And our lead story tonight, Snow White goes woke. Yeah. So we'll dig into that. The culture wars is in full swing again on this August 13th, 2023. Stay with me. Let me just regroup again just a little bit while I get these first clips lined up. And when we come back, we will dig into the whole Disney Snow White controversy. I'm tired of it, but here we go. More culture wars right after this.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So, if they aren't canceling culture, they are changing it, rewriting history and rewriting scripts, rewriting classics in order to, I guess, bring them into line with today's progressive, woke, neoliberal agenda. The latest, just the laundry list of cultural things that they have outright canceled. From Catcher in the Rye to Gone with the Wind, Grease, because it's kind of rapey, and now Snow White. Thank you, Disney. The first time I saw Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was when I was just a young kid, and the neighbors were going to the drive-in, and the neighbor had a T-bird, a Thunderbird. We all piled in his Thunderbird and went off to the drive-in. And the lady who lived across the street, super nice lady, she took us to the drive-in with her husband and their kids, and I got to go. And she thought, well, she didn't think I would be into the movie at all, but man, I was mesmerized by the animation, the storytelling, the story itself, awesome. I mean, I knew the Snow White story. I probably would have been about 9 or 10 years old, maybe. And it blew me away because it was just so darn good. And that movie made in 1937.
And this has always stuck with me my entire life. Not, I think people view Snow White as being, uh, at the time, maybe this is a sexist perspective. It's supposed to be a girl's movie, really, right? But no, no. Back then, for me, 9-year-old boy, it was about the story and the art at that point, and it was just so well done. It was amazing. Think about the quality of the animation from a movie in the 1930s when they did it back then, man. That was real art. That wasn't just some computer generated image. That was stuff created by human beings on cells and then transferred to film, one frame at a time. Amazing, amazing work. Meticulous, exact, highly skilled people doing everything. And now today, we have this controversy surrounding this remake of this classic story. Disney is remaking or has remade Snow White. And they have this Latina actress, Rachel Zegler. I'm not that familiar with her, honestly. Some of the stuff today, some of the newest movies and things. I used to actually do a movie review show long time ago when I was in my 20s and on a radio station. And I don't keep up with the movies as much as I used to anymore because I don't like the way that they wreck them with the political correctness and the progressive politics and the political correctness. Yeah, they're just they do it with everything, and obviously through time, and even when I was younger, everything was, I guess, influenced by the politics of the time. I guess when you're younger, you don't notice it as much as maybe you do when you get older because things change over time. I think that's part of the problem with people actually is that they always seem to want change because we are never satisfied as a species or as a society. It doesn't matter how good things get, we're never satisfied. And we're always told and we believe that things suck. We need to change it to save the world or whatever it is. But when I'm looking backwards, I'm seeing times that were a whole lot better not that long ago. Everybody on the progressive side is like, they changed it. Stop. Okay. It was pretty damn good for a while. Some things could improve, but they tore it all down. Just turn it inside out. Case in point, Snow White. Yesterday, we were talking about relationships, right? And how difficult it is today for young men and young women to come together because of all these social pressures and the changing social norms, sexual politics, technology, healthcare technology, birth control, which has changed the social dynamic between men and women. And now it's hard for people to even communicate. Women being told, you don't even need a man. That's kind of the message we're getting. I haven't even seen the movie yet. And that's the message that I'm getting from the new Snow White flick. And of course, I'm getting that message because that's exactly what they're telling us in these promotional appearances that the actors and the producers are involved with, right? I mean, oh man. It makes me wonder where 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, where are we going to be as a society with the way that the sexes interact and what kind of relationships are people going to have, if any? I don't know, man. Like, okay, so here's the star of the show, the new Snow White, explaining the political correctness behind this. I get it. I totally get it. But yeah, I hate it. Maybe I'm just old. I don't know. But listen to this.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no Prince, or a different kind of Prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story, just because like we cast a guy in the movie,
Right.
Andrew Burnap, great dude. It's it's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
So all the Prince's scenes could get cut. I don't need a man. And you don't care about the love story? Let me fill you in. What's your name? Never heard of you before. What's this actress's name again? Ziegler, whatever your name is. I'm gonna check out some of your work, okay? Like, to find out what this is. Rachel Ziegler, whatever. Does anybody know? Tell me in the chat. How do you pronounce her last name? This no-name actress. Whatever. Who cares? Love stories are a cornerstone of storytelling. Go check out Shakespeare. Ever hear of Romeo and Juliet? It's a classic. Newsflash. History lesson. Same damn thing in this case. Shakespeare. If you read Shakespeare, the story structures employed in Shakespearean classics really created a template for just about everything that is good in literature and screenplays, theater. And a key component to creating a great story is a love interest. It's done all the time. And Snow White is a story that uses that tool. It's what makes it so great. Now, you can take some liberties with it. You can. You could, shift it a little here or push it over there a little bit and massage it on the side and tickle it on the other side and, comb its hair, dress it up, do whatever you want, kind of. But don't cut the Prince out of the damn thing just because it's Hollywood. And I don't think you will, but I haven't seen the movie, and oh my God. You have to have the love interest in Snow White for the story to be Snow White. Okay. Also, because you are so out of touch with reality, because you are so freaking woke, let me explain something else to you, okay? The Prince was not a stalker. Let me fill you in. Guys are generally pretty damn insecure when it comes to trying to approach a young woman or a woman of any age to try to get their attention. So generally speaking, when they are interested in a person, a woman, and I'm talking about, this is a heterosexual thing, okay? So I don't even want to talk about the other stuff because I'm just, this is me telling you what it's like. And this is maybe not every guy, but generally speaking, I think this guys are insecure. They're a little bit afeared of approaching some woman that they are attracted to, that they maybe want to just get to know. So they are like tongue-tied and shy, even when they appear to be the most confident guy out there. You know, when they're wearing their leather jacket with the collar flipped up and their, you know, Joe Biden aviator shades trying to be Mr. Cool. That's just all a facade, man. That's just them wrapping themselves in some sort of like emotional armor to try to portray themselves as something that they're really not, so that they get the attention of the female that they're pursuing. And pursuing them is not stalking. It's trying to get up the courage to go and say, "Would you like to dance?" when they're at a thing or something. And you know what makes it even more difficult for a guy to approach a woman is when you have Snow White saying men suck and we don't even need them, and I don't want a prince. I'll tell you something else. I'll fill you in. Whatever your name is. If I was in the dating game and I was in your age bracket, I wouldn't even bother with you. Wouldn't bother with you. Because you might be playing Snow White, but you're acting like the Wicked Witch of the West or the evil witch in the forest. And I'd be afeared that you might give me a poison apple or something when we went out for a beverage after a movie. What the hell is going on out there, man? This is Disney. It's like, bloody hell. And look at the way the mainstream media is telling this story, you know, exploring this issue or reporting on it. You know, they're making everything worse for everybody too. Crying out loud. Sorry, I'm just not into this crap. I'm just not. I'm so freaking tired of it. The entire Snow White remake controversy explained. Okay, let's see how, what is this website? Sportskita.com pop culture. Well, this is just another version, another rewrite of an article likely that's making the rounds. So here we are. Here's the star of the show, Rachel Ziegler is the main character in Disney's Snow White remake. And there's Snow White from 1937. Great artwork. And they're talking about, Disney intends to make Snow White's live action remake, which is set to release in March of 2024. The movie, starring Rachel Ziegler and Gal Gadot, will reportedly be very different from the 1937 animated classic. Following certain revelations about casting and the general plot line, the upcoming film has garnered a massive amount of backlash. No kidding! Can't imagine why. And is surrounded by controversy on various fronts. Maybe it's because you're wrecking it. In an interview with Variety, Ziegler, who plays the titular, I don't want to say that word, character of the Disney princess and Godot, who features as the evil queen, disclosed that Snow White is not a damsel in distress anymore. Ugh. Well, what's she going to do? Rescue the prince or something? Okay. She will neither await a prince to rescue her, nor will she dream about love, because in Zegler's words, it's no longer 1937. The Latina actress's casting has also been criticized by racist trolls. There it is. You're all a bunch of sexists and racists and misogynists, and we must end the patriarchy. Therefore, Snow White shall not ever fall in love. Well, unless what? It's with another woman? I don't know where this is going. But we're not done. Oh, no! There's more coming. The movie hasn't been made yet. I haven't watched it. I haven't seen it. You see where it's going. Another controversy seems to be the casting of the Seven Dwarfs, or a lack thereof. The filmmakers reportedly thought of taking this particular angle in a different direction altogether to avoid reinforcing stereotypes. The change was made after actors from the community, including Peter Dinklage, commented on the film being a backward story for typecasting. Ah! Ugh! Ah! Oh, look, they're so proud of themselves, and they don't give an inch on this stuff, and they are completely unapologetic. It's like, we're just going to rip the heart out of this story and twist it around and use this big budget and this major studio to completely flip this story inside out and wreck it. We're glad we're doing it. Here's this. Listen to this.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign. And
Disney's live action remake of Snow White, which stars West Side Story's Rachel Zegler as the main character, is set to release in March 2024. Yes, it is. Blah. People don't like her already. Here she is. This is a Twitter post from somebody on Health Nut News. And it says, the new Snow White really is the most insufferable woman ever. Don't kill me, but I look forward to the day all these Hollywood elite are replaced with artificial intelligence. At least AI would be intelligent. Listen to what she has to say here. This actor. What is the politically correct way to refer to a female performer of the silver screen now? Actress? No, I think you're supposed to say actor, right? I don't know. Whatever.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Because you're just not paid enough. Oh my goodness, because you have to stand there in a Snow White dress. Do you know what a privilege that is to get to land a role like that? I mean, you have to work, obviously, to get it, and you have to have the talent, I guess, to play the role. But man, what an incredible honor to be able to play a role like that. I get to get paid for every single hour that this is streamed online. Anybody shooting this with a cell phone should pay me. Bad attitude, dude. US Weekly reported that the criticism first started in 2021 when a Latina actress was cast to play the main character. Racist trolls and other critics were quick to question her inclusion and express their dissatisfaction with the situation. The report mentioned that Ziegler, who is of Colombian and Polish descent, spoke to Vanity Fair last October about her role and said, people are making these jokes about ours being the PC Snow White, where it's like, yeah, it is, because it needed that. It's an 85-year-old cartoon. And our version is a refreshing story about a young woman who has a function beyond someday my prince will come. Of course, on the other hand, the 1937 movie might be freaking awesome. Because it is. It's fantastic and always will be, and will be better. It is better, will remain to be better, and will always be better than anything you are about to make. I have decided. I hereby declare that the 1937 Snow White is, shall, and always will be superior to anything you are about to produce in this 2023 dystopian nightmare of an existence that we are in today. I am unlikely to fork over $20 and $500 for the popcorn to go sit in an overpriced, air-conditioned arena with a screen in it to watch it. Man alive. Oh, I'm sorry. No men allowed. Therein lies the problem too, right? I mean, I'm just going to come right out and say it. This is a war on men. It's a war on relationships. It's a war on anything traditional. It's a war on families. It's a war on heterosexuality in a way. It's political incorrectness. And I'm going to say something else. If you have sons, give them a great big hug. And give them words of encouragement. Prop them up. They need it now more than ever. This is an assault on masculinity. And we need our next generation of young men to be strong and confident and polite, well-mannered, well-educated, clear-eyed, and they need to feel useful. They need to feel like they have value. And they need to feel like, and they need to know that there's someone out there for them to build a future with, a life. And that their purpose is not simply utilitarian, that they're not just a drone. That they are put on this earth for something more important. That the messages that they're being fed and bombarded with through mass media, through these Hollywood productions, that they just don't hold weight, that it's not true. They do have value, and that their part in this world can't simply be cut. That their scenes through life won't just end up on the cutting room floor of life. That they frickin' matter. Just as much as any females does, or any other person, that any human being does. Every life has value. And love is important. It's the most important damn thing there is. More important than any job, career, movie. It's the thing that gives meaning to your life. And it's the thing that leads to everlasting life. Because it leads to kids and families that extend out beyond our lives. It's what sustains humanity. This is not a healthy message that Disney is distributing and monetizing and commercializing. This is social engineering. It's sad, and honestly, it's just gotten to the point where it's bloody disgusting. Because this isn't about empowering women. It's about more than that. It's about pushing down men and young boys. And I don't think they even realize, some of the people involved in it, that they're doing it. But you are. And if you don't want the kind of social problems that we have today to amplify and become worse down the road and into the future, if you want to save the next generation, if you want a healthy community and a healthy society, you better find a way to make sure that you bring everybody along. Make everybody realize that they have an important role to play in making this world, our communities better, safer, more prosperous places. We all have a role to play. Disney. What the hell happened to Disney? Years ago, we took our kids to Disney. I didn't like it. I'm probably one of the few people in the world that went to Disney in Florida and didn't like it. But I didn't. That was what, 20 some years ago? Almost. Yeah. Just over 20 years ago. Well, didn't like the place. Plastic, fake. I loved Disney stuff when I was younger. There was something about it even then that was it just turned me off. And now all this stuff that's coming out from Disney, woke, politically correct, social engineering, blah, blah, blah. Not for me. Tired of it. I'm just tired of it. They're just taking it all too damn far. For me. Maybe not for other people. And I I don't have to wait for the movie to come out to judge it. I'm judging what they're doing now. And that alone is enough for me to say my piece here tonight. I'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Fear not the storm, for truth is on our side. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so what can we talk about here now before we have to get off YouTube? You know, on the dwarf thing on the Snow White thing, man. Like, if you're not gonna, so does that mean that there's more to this? Hang on here. Let me just. Oh my God. So they're not going to have the dwarfs, right? So here's a picture right here. At 5'2", the new Snow White is going to be shorter than most of the new dwarves. So here's a leaked image to show you what the dwarfs look like. I don't know if you can see that very well. Here. There it is. So Snow White is shorter than the dwarves. So they're not really dwarves. So for crying out loud. The U.S. Weekly reported that this particular change was made after the Game of Thrones actor Peter Dinklage claimed that the casting choice made no sense to him. He lambasted them for being progressive in one way, but still making that F-ing backward story about 7 dwarves living in a cave together. Dinklage had previously criticized the film's typecasting of dwarf actors in stereotypical roles. These characters are now being portrayed by black actors and women among dwarves, which has again caused a stir in the community. Stunt performer Jason Weeman Acuna told TMZ that he disagreed with the change and how such alterations take away job opportunities from dwarf actors. Exactly. Ugh. Yeah, we can't have dwarves because, it would be too stereotypical to show short people in the movie. So we won't have dwarfs. So then all the short people don't get jobs. Maybe you could put them in and have a script that is respectful, but still include them. But in your effort to be diverse and inclusive, you're excluding them. Blah. Thought I was done with the story, but I'm not. Because it just keeps on coming. So, yeah. Coming up, March 2024. Another crappy Disney movie. Wow. All right, no, whatever. So tired of it. I was always a big Star Trek fan. I was watching this it's a film that Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, I guess he used to take this 16mm film around to conventions. and show uncut some of the stuff that was not shown in the original pilot, the one with Jeffrey Hunter, that they later remade it into. They took the pilot episode, turned it into an actual episode, but there were still scenes. They called them the menagerie. Got me thinking, they called it the cage, actually. And it got me thinking about, we actually do live in a cage here. And I found some similarities between that and the Matrix. And there's like this element to the story that also makes you wonder about being awake or not awake, aware or not aware of what is really going on. Because the story in the cage is that this woman crash lands and survives on this planet with really smart dudes with great big giant brains, and she's all disfigured. And then they have the ability to put images and a false reality, an illusion into her mind so that she can live in her mind, not being disfigured and being happy. And then along comes the Starship Enterprise and the captain, who's this young swashbuckling, attractive man. And so they direct the starship over and they kidnap him, and they try to get them to hang out together, and they put illusions in his head too, because they want him to stay so that they can fall in love and maybe even create a family and then populate the planet with more people, which is kind of a cool story. But it also it raises this question about, would you rather be awake and completely aware of the reality of your situation and live in reality, or would you rather live an illusion and be happier? Which pill do you want to take, the red pill or the blue pill? Well, if you're disfigured, then maybe you want to live an illusion. And in the cage, in that story, the woman chooses to live the illusion. And then in the menagerie, which is the episode that was made for television later, Captain Pike, played by Jeffrey Hunter, he becomes disfigured as well. And then Captain Kirk takes him back to the planet so that he can ultimately also live an illusion. But he does come together with the woman, and they have a relationship in their minds. See, that was the 1960s. That was a great story. That had a lot of layers to it. Questions of ethics and relationships, love, family, all of these things. Existentialism, whether, you believe in fate or whether you think you control your destiny. A lot of these kinds of questions. So I just thought it was interesting. It kind of plays into what we're dealing with here right now, too. With this Snow White stuff. That's a great story because it has a love interest to it. But we've lost our way, man. We have lost our way. And the thing about that Star Trek episode is it also makes me kind of look at the political situation we're in right now and whether people want to choose. I think that there are certain levels of awareness or awakeness on all sides of the political spectrum too. And people make choices every day about what they choose to believe, which kind of propaganda they choose to believe, because we are bombarded by propaganda on all sides. Case in point, this war in Ukraine. It's as much an information war as it is anything else, you know? And as they say, the first casualty of war is truth. I think that's the one truth that is more evident to tonight than ever before. What is the truth? People are fed all kinds of information, and people, as I said last night, they want confirmation of their bias more than they want truth, generally speaking. Most people want to remain asleep. Even when they think they're awake, they're quite often still asleep or half asleep, but they feel better if they just get confirmation of their bias and confirmation of what they think they know, rather than embracing information that might actually challenge what they think. In fact, I'll challenge everyone right now. Just think for a moment, just consider that maybe you're wrong about the things that you think you know. Stand back, and I do this like all the time. As a journalist, it's something I've always done. Stand back and say, wait a minute, maybe, what if I'm wrong about this? Maybe I'm looking at it completely wrong. And I bet I'm going to listen to other information, and I'm going to look at the other side. I'm going to go over there and take in that other information, and I'm going to challenge myself and try to determine if what I believe is actually true. I'm going to assume that I'm wrong and then see where that leads. Put yourself in the shoes of the person on the other side who has the opposing point of view for just a moment. Challenge yourself. And then go look at the other information, absorb it, try to take in the other perspective, and that will get you closer to the truth. Because there can be even more than one perspective on something, right? And truth is not an absolute all the time. It can be a matter sometimes of perspective. There are absolute hard facts, no doubt. But then there is also perspective. Perspective even on who's winning the war in Ukraine. You know, when you listen to the analysts out there, it depends on who you listen to, what you think. How would I know what the truth is when I'm over here in Canada? I don't really know for sure what the truth is when it comes to the war in Ukraine, or what's going on in Russia even. I'm not there. I can't see it with my own eyes. I only get the videos. I only get the talking heads on television and online is feeding us information. And you see these polarized perspectives, points of view, generally speaking, where one group of people over here, these analysts are saying, oh no, NATO's winning and it's bad and the Russians are on the run and we're gonna win this thing no matter what it takes. We're gonna keep dumping resources into it and we're gonna win it. And then on the other side, you have a completely different perspective, which, I have been sitting here as well saying, I think that the Russian forces will prevail here because I think they're just so determined and that they can't lose this war. I don't think they will allow themselves to lose this war no matter what. And I think we need to come to grips with that here in the West. But that's my perspective. I'm not there. I can only analyze what is being fed to me. And tonight, I'm seeing more information on the sort of the NATO side coming out, where it's being, how can I put this? It's I've seen a little bit of a mixed bag, but here's a video. Let me just run a little bit of this. Russian tanks trying to enter Bakhmut, destroyed by Ukrainian HIMARS. I'll just bring it up here for you. run a little bit of this. It runs a little bit contrary to, a lot of the other stuff we tell you here on this channel a lot. So let's just look at the other side, the other perspective for a moment here, and try to gain a little bit more perspective that might get us a little bit closer to actual truth in this truthless environment.
HIMARS are now even used to destroy fortified Russian positions. What was this soldier thinking while the missiles were flying right at him? And this is how it looks like at night. Naturally, it is impossible to shoot down such a shell or hide from it. Armor turns into a mesh, shrapnel easily penetrating body armor, and helmets. Check out this video. Now, watch this fragment. The projectile impact has a distinctive explosion. It's the work of the HIMARS. It's unmistakable. That's how his ammunition explodes. Here's a few more examples. 2 Russian Grad MLRS stand in a combat position. The Ukrainians use special shells with a lot of shrapnel. 2 missiles destroy the MLRS together with the crew. And this is a Tor surface-to-air missile system. The accuracy of HIMARS is enough to hit a SAM with just 1 missile. The cost of such a complex is more than 10 times higher than the cost of 1 HIMARS missile. Over 50 large Russian ammunition depots were destroyed in 2 months. On September 10th, Mark Milley said that more than 400 large military targets had been hit with HIMARS. This is what it looked like in practice. This is a video of a hit on a Russian military convoy, and there are dozens of such examples. Here's another one, all thanks to the reconnaissance advantage and high mobility of HIMARS complexes. First, reconnaissance detects the target. Then, the coordinates are transmitted to the nearest HIMARS calculations. When everything is ready, the Ukrainians send some gifts to the Russians and burn the Russian equipment. What were the Russians counting on by moving their equipment into the open? The Ukrainians followed them, waited for the Russians to stop, and aimed missiles at them. The Russians hid their howitzer in a forest belt. That's no obstacle for HIMARS. The howitzer and the crew destroyed. Today, I'm going to show you how these systems are burning out Russian troops in Ukraine. These weapons broke all of the Russians' plans. How and why did that happen? Let's get to the bottom of it.
Okay, so that's enough. That's not news. That is an assessment and potentially propaganda. That's a video designed to make people feel better about what the NATO forces are doing and to show that, I guess, your money that they're taking from you is being well spent. But I need to remind everybody, too, that as those explosions are happening, in most cases, people are dying. They're killing people. Soldiers, civilians, whatever, even if they're military targets. They're not just taking out the equipment. The people driving those trucks, the personnel manning those systems, those soldiers, they're being killed. Keep that in mind. Real human lives were lost there. Same thing on the other side, and all human life is valuable. But that's the kind of, video content that is being used in the West to generate support for the war. And there's a lot of other stuff going on too through the mainstream media here, a lot of cheerleading, even a lot of online social media outlets are engaged, I would say, in censorship and so on. RT is banned in the West now, and that is because they don't want that Russian message flowing through. They want you to have a singular perspective, and yet, regardless of that, Messaging is still getting through. Other perspectives are getting through. And I think that is helping people get closer to the truth. We can't continue to broadcast here on YouTube because we are going to start getting into subject matter now that is just a little bit too not YouTube friendly. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to put the link again to the Rumble channel in the chat so that you guys can follow us over to Rumble now. We are going to jump off YouTube and Facebook. Hang on a second here. Rumble link. There it is. And away she goes. There's the Rumble link in the chat. And let me go over to the other Rumble link here. Go to the secondary Rumble channel that we have. And post it in there as well. So the show will continue over on Rumble. And I hope everyone can continue to join us over there. Here we go. And that's the link. And we be jamming. How are you tonight? We be jamming. I see you in the chat there on the secondary Rumble channel. Thank you very much for joining us. And we have a record number of viewers over there, I think. Well, maybe not. No, not quite. But we've got a few people watching on the second Rumble channel, so thank you for that. And there's the link in the Rumble chat. Let me put it in over here on all those YouTube channels again. Right here. One more time. We're going to go to a break while everybody migrates over to the main Rumble channel or the secondary Rumble channel, and we will see you on the other side of this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so we'll get to that in a moment. That's Donald Trump at the Iowa State Fair. But you know, the censorship thing is it's an issue. What can I say? It's an issue, and that is why we are now disconnecting from YouTube. Love you, YouTube, but we got to go. Folks, if you're watching on YouTube, please, 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 please come over to Rumble and join us over there. We will see you over on Rumble. Very sorry that we have to pull off, but that is exactly what we need to do right now. I hate to do it. But we're gone. Okay, there goes one YouTube channel. Sorry about that, YouTube, but you're gonzo. And we'll be on Rumble. We'll be on Rumble, guys. And there goes the other YouTuber channel right there. Okay. There goes YouTube. And I think we're probably okay over with the rest of those channels there. All right. let's see what we have going on here. There's everything going on. Okay. So, yeah, censorship, big issue. Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector. He's been on this show a few times. He's well known. They took his channels down off YouTube. So he's totally censored on YouTube now. That is because his messaging has been, critical of what NATO is doing, the United States, and the information he's providing does not paint a very favorable picture for NATO forces over there. And I think that, a lot of what he says has been pretty accurate, especially when you see that just within the last week, analysts over on CNN are even coming out and saying that the war is not going as well for NATO as we were being told. So it's all about information warfare, really. That's why they're shutting Scott Ritter down. Everything is about information warfare. I've been saying, well, I continue to say that, you could almost lose a war and still win it if you control the flow of information. That's why the United States has such a powerful movie system in Hollywood. They manufacture consent. They manipulate public opinion with movies, television, radio, social media, internet. It's incredibly important. It's as important or more important than all the weapons systems that they send, into a combat area, any country. The information war is critical because it builds morale, it builds support. And it's not just what you're told, it's what you're not told too. That's why they censor things. Censorship also works. Let me find this. There was there's this lawsuit going on, right? Involving the Biden administration. Maybe what I'll do though is maybe we'll run this other clip first while I find that Twitter thread. It's pretty telling. But this is timely as well. So let's do this first with the RFK clip. He was asked to speak at that peace rally a number of days ago, but wasn't able to attend. And so now we have this statement from RFK Jr. With regard to that peace rally. And it's all about Ukraine and a little bit of history as well. And it explains why we are so close to a nuclear conflict. So let me bring that up for you here, folks. We'll run that, and then I'll try to find that Twitter thread that really reveals in a stark way the reality of the Biden administration's aggressive stance and manipulation of censorship practices as it relates to social media. Let me bring up the RFK clip here. And for those of you who think that nuclear war is not that big of a risk, well, I'm with RFK Jr. on this. Here we go.
Here, and I want to thank all of the organizers at Humanity for Peace for putting this conference together and for giving me the opportunity to address you. My uncle, John F. Kennedy, once told one of his two closest friends, Ben Bradley, who was the editor of the Washington Post, when Bradley asked him, "What do you want on your gravestone as your epitaph?" My uncle told him he kept the peace. And when Bradley questioned him on that further and pressed him, my Uncle Jack said that the primary job of a president of the United States is to keep the country out of war. And he succeeded in doing that during his 3 years in office. He never sent a combat soldier abroad to die. He kept the country out of Laos. He kept us out of Cuba on 2 occasions. He kept us out of Berlin in 1961. And he kept us out of Vietnam. He sent only 16,000 military advisors there, mainly Green Berets. And on October 22nd, they didn't have permission to fight, although some of them did. And in October of 1962, he learned that one of his Green Berets had died, and he asked his aide to give him a combat casualty list. And the aide came back and said 75 had died so far. He said, that's too many. And he ordered, that afternoon, he signed National Security Order 263, ordering all 16,000 troops home, with the first 1,000 coming home beginning at the end of November. And of course, a month after that, right at the end of November, he was killed. And a week later, President Johnson remanded that order. Within a year, Johnson had sent the 250,000 troops that the military had wanted from the beginning. But my uncle understood one thing about war, and it's something we need to understand today. Because today we're to a nuclear exchange that at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962. My uncle understood that if you want to keep the country out of war, you have to be able to put yourself into the shoes of your adversary. When he came into office, the intelligence agencies and the people around him knew almost nothing about Nikita Khrushchev. President Eisenhower had said that it wouldn't be a soldier, a president who had started out as a soldier who would put Americans into World War III. Because the soldiers knew about it. He was a soldier himself. My uncle had been a soldier, was the only president to win the Purple Heart. And Khrushchev, of course, was a soldier and had been in the most brutal battle of World War II in Stalingrad. But the CIA knew almost nothing about him because there was a mole in Langley, and all of the people who had, all of the Kremlin officials who had defected the United States or who had tried to work as spies for the United States were immediately detected. So the CIA knew almost nothing about Khrushchev, and they assumed that everybody in the Kremlin was a monolith. My uncle felt disabled by that lack of knowledge. And in 1961, he started out his relationship with Khrushchev on a rocky road. They met in Vienna, and he found Khrushchev was pugnacious and bombastic, and had practically dared my uncle to go to war with him. My uncle quickly understood that he himself was surrounded by military war hawks and the intelligence apparatus and the military brass of the Pentagon, who saw a nuclear exchange with Russia as not only unavoidable, but also desirable. When my uncle made a proposition to my uncle to go to war on several occasions, they said that we were going to win that war because we had more missiles than the Russians, which we do not have today. They have 1,000 more than us. But his brass told him that there would be only 30 million American casualties and 130 million Russians, and that would be victory. And my uncle left that meeting saying, and we call ourselves the human race. He knew that he had to. In 1961, in August, there was a confrontation in the Berlin Wall where US tanks were facing down Russian tanks at Checkpoint Charlie. And the world was this close to nuclear war at that point. And my uncle made a back channel cable to Khrushchev, asking him to pull out his tanks. Khrushchev sent a note back to my uncle Cable saying, My back is to the wall. I have no place to retreat. And my uncle realized at that point that Khrushchev was in the same position that he was. He was also surrounded by military warlocks who were egging for a fight with the United States. And they realized that only the two of them were going to prevent that full-blown nuclear exchange. My uncle made a promise to him that if he withdrew, that if Khrushchev withdrew his tank battalion, that my uncle would follow within a few hours. And they did that. And afterwards, they trusted each other. And they realized they had to communicate directly with each other. And they began a series of 26 letters that they exchanged with each other, highly personal letters that were smuggled by a Soviet GRU spy named Georgy Bolshakov that had run their own State Department, their diplomatic corps, the military, and intelligence apparatus. So they were talking directly to each other. They also installed hotlines at Cape Cod, where I live, and those wires are still protruding out of the home of the summer lighthouse, which my brother now owns, and another hotline at the White House, where they could pick up the phone and talk directly to each other. And that's more important today than it ever was. Today, we're in a very analogous situation where we are putting Vladimir Putin in a place where his back is against the wall. And it's a time more than ever that we need to be talking to each other. We have made no effort to talk to the Russian leadership for many, many months, almost a year. And there have been many efforts by the Russian leadership to engage us and engage Ukraine in peace negotiations. And we have rebuffed those. In April of 2022, the Russians, and we now know the Russians and the Ukrainians initialed a peace agreement that was based upon the Minsk Accords, and the Russians were already beginning to withdraw their troops. And yet we sent the U.S. White House sent Boris Johnson over there to torpedo that deal. We need to be doing the opposite of that. We need to be talking directly with Vladimir Putin and all sides, and we need to settle this insanity before we initiate another nuclear exchange that would destroy all of humanity. So I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, and I want to congratulate you and send you all my gratitude for making this a priority for all of humanity. Thank you very much.
And thank you to Lori for sending us that link so that we could share that with you here tonight. So as I was saying, censorship is a big issue, and here's something else that Lori sent to my attention, and I'll share it with you here. This is from the Twitter account of Attorney General Andrew Bailey with regard to the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit. And it kind of lays out the Biden administration's involvement in sort of coercing social media to do their bidding and censor people. So these are highlights from what it says here. Today's oral argument in Missouri versus Biden proved what we've known all along. The Biden administration has shamelessly and relentlessly coerced and colluded with social media platforms to censor free speech. Some highlights from the hearing. And this has really gone viral. This Twitter thread. So Attorney General Andrew Bailey, Biden's lawyer, says here, seriously insinuated COVID caused a lot in the world to change, and thus government censorship is permissible. He says, Biden's lawyer also said that Americans have not been harmed by the vast censorship enterprise emanating from the Biden White House. Every American who has had a post removed or deplatformed would beg to differ. Yes. He says here in this next post, Biden's lawyer asserted that they have never once threatened social media companies into censoring free speech. He must be suffering from memory loss. Here's a recap. And here we go. He says, Joe Biden told reporters that Facebook is killing people, in quotation marks, because they originally refused to silence truthful information about the COVID vaccine. He then goes on and says, Jen Psaki spouted from the White House podium that social media companies would lose their Section 230 immunity if they didn't work with the feds to remove disfavored speech. He goes on, White House Digital Director Rob Flaherty told Twitter that if your product is appending misinformation to our tweets, that seems like a pretty fundamental issue, in quotation marks. Flaherty used the F word to convey his disgust to social media companies that Biden's Instagram account wasn't gaining followers after Meta's algorithm identified it as a spreader of vaccine misinformation. He says, you can't make this up. That is pretty incredible. Like, did you get that? Biden's Instagram account wasn't gaining followers because Meta's algorithm identified Biden's Instagram account as being a spreader of vaccine misinformation. So their own algorithm identified Biden's posts as being misinformation in itself. You can't make that up. Quickly after these interactions, it says here, the social media companies' resistance to censor quickly crumbled. So back to highlights of the hearing. One of the judges noted that the exchanges between the feds and the social media companies include veiled and not so veiled threats as the government strong arms the tech companies into censoring speech. It continues with this post. Another judge, it says, called out Biden's lawyer, noting that, quote, you talk about these meetings between the feds and social media companies as if they're friendly. The judge also pointed out that when the federal government says jump, social media companies merely say how high, seemingly due to the immense pressure to censor Americans' speech. It goes on. The same judge, it says here, then asked Biden's lawyer if hypothetically it matters if the federal government knowingly censors true speech if it disagrees with the government's narrative, that is, C-19. The government unabashedly said no. And the Attorney General goes on and says today's hearing was further proof that Joe Biden has zero respect for the Constitution. And Andrew Bailey continues by saying, but Missouri is fighting back. He will not get away with this blatant First Amendment violation. Stay tuned. It's just so clear and out in the open. The country that's supposed to be a beacon of hope and freedom for the world, now leading the way on censorship. Wow. Okay. Let's take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at the fallout from yesterday's Trump versus DeSantis Iowa State Fair visits. It was entertaining. Don't go away.
Hello, world. Are you awake? uniting humankind by liberating millions of minds at a time. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so yesterday, Trump, DeSantis, they go to Iowa, they go to the state fair. They're both jockeying for position and support. Iowa's a key state. Originally, DeSantis thought he was going to be there and Trump wouldn't be around. And then Trump says at the last minute, well, I'm going to Iowa too. And so in we go, and he kind of tries to steal DeSantis's thunder. And then there's protests and mayhem and it's politics. And while all that is going on, there's talk of even another indictment against Trump, all related to the J6 incident and I guess whatever they say, I don't know, another indictment. I can't keep track of them all. So what happened yesterday? Well, a protester was dragged out by police. A bunch of people came by to protest as Ron DeSantis was trying to speak, and they were blowing whistles and making noise and carrying signs that said, I guess some of them had T-shirts on that said, quote, bitch, get stuff done, and quote, be gay, fund abortion. So these were not protesters, I don't think, from, the MAGA crowd. These were from the probably the Democrat side and the woke side. And it's pretty obvious, right? So these protesters used cowbells and whistles, and they were trying to silence him. And that is, a hallmark tool of the woke left. That's what they do. They're not interested in free speech. They're also interested very much in censorship and just shutting down speech and shutting out and silencing their political opponents. And so the cops kicked, some of these people out yesterday. And while all this was going on, Trump was stealing the thunder of Ron DeSantis. And all this while reporters were asking Trump about his indictments and the legal problems that he's facing. And he's saying that, in answer to a lot of the questions from the reporters, he's just saying that he didn't do anything wrong and that he'll never take a plea deal. And he called one reporter a wise guy for asking questions and referred to everything that is happening to him on the legal side as, election interference. So that's what was going on in Iowa. And here's a clip, and this is from Right Side Broadcasting. Look at they have all these ads plastered all over their broadcast. So just letting you know. It's like don't need to let you know. The ads are front and center. They're just right in front of your face, right? Birch Gold. I didn't get paid to say that, by the way. Here's just a little clip from Trump yesterday at the Iowa State Fair.
Works behind the scenes very nicely. I love this guy. Backdates, a very, very special guy. He's a talented guy, too. Mr. President, I cannot stand these people that are destroying our country, that are opening our borders, that are weaponizing our federal law enforcement against patriotic Americans who love this nation as we should. We are having a great time at the Bear. We love standing with you, but we know that only through force do we make any change in a corrupt town like Washington, D.C. And so to all my friends here in Iowa, when you see them come for this man, know that they are coming for our movement, and they are coming for all of us. And as hard as you see him work, I need you working 10 times harder, 100 times harder. We're going to win Iowa. We're going to march to the nomination. And we're going to save and turn this country to Come on up. Get over there. Can you come up here? Come on. Give me your hand too. So, that's great. Yeah. Thank you. I got you. So, this is a man who people love. Everybody knows and loves him. He gave up a lot. He gave up a real lot. And he's one of our most respected congressmen, and I just want to thank you very much.
I just want to mention too that because Matt Gaetz said that and he used those words through force, that on social media tonight, he's being attacked. Trump is being attacked. People are suggesting that that was a call to violence. I didn't get that. But that's what's being said out there tonight as a result of that little speech from Matt Gaetz as he stood beside Donald Trump. So be careful what you say. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of public opinion these days.
Y'all see the president hold me up there? You see that? That's how the president holds up our veterans, and I mean that for real. He holds up our veterans. He doesn't turn his back on our veterans. He takes care of our veterans. That is our president, Donald J. Trump. We had it before, we're going to have him again. We salute you, sir. Thank you, Brian. So I just want to thank, this has been really, it's a trip of love, but it is all over the country, no matter where we go. There's never been enthusiasm. You know, we did great in 2016, we won. We did much better. I hate to say this, we did much better in 2020. The election was rigged.
Okay, so we know all that. And that is what would get us banned instantly off YouTube. We're still over on one of the Facebook platforms, so we're going to stop right there. But that's the censorship problem right there. I'm being forced to dump out of that, even though we've dumped off some of the censorship platforms just talking about that stuff. So as he says those things, bammo, right? We need to be so careful because the censorship is having a chilling effect on everything that we do. It will only get worse as we continue our journey along to the election in 2024, Election Watch 2024. And we continue to watch what is going on that front. And yesterday, as we watched what was going on in Iowa, we saw Ron DeSantis heckled. So I believe this is the clip that I want right here. I think this is the one where DeSantis is trying to speak and the crowd just will not let him. The protesters. There was a plane that flew overhead. And I think this one may have come from maybe a Trump supporter. It says, "Be likable, Ron," or "Ron, be likable." But I don't know. I'm not sure who was behind that, but it certainly did happen. And this was what was going on while he was trying to speak.
I think he may be ahead of me. Hey, you know what? We're in Iowa, and in Iowa, we're Iowa nice. So let's give everybody the opportunity to hear our candidates. tell you do, but we're all going to have an opportunity to hear from each and every candidate. That's what we've been doing. So, okay, so you're doing the 99 county tour. I'm very competitive. I think you may be ahead of me in the tour.
So you get a sense of what was going on there. Did you hear all the cowbells and the whistles? They just did. The protesters just did not want him heard. So they were just doing their best to shut him down. They were also shouting "Ron to fascist" and "Puddin' fingers" on megaphones while they were ringing those cowbells and blowing their whistles. Two protesters effectively cut short his campaign stop there that day, yesterday. And it was the second notable disruption of a Republican presidential candidate by the left. Again, as I said, not MAGA people doing that to DeSantis. It was left wing, activists who were there to try and shut him down. This week, after a Democrat on Thursday asked Mike Pence at the Iowa State Fair, "Why did you commit treason on January 6th?" That I'm not sure who asked that question. So I don't know where they were at on the political spectrum, but that seems like probably more of a question likely to have come from someone maybe within the QAnon crowd. And so at the DeSantis event yesterday, I guess there was a man there supporting DeSantis wearing a hat given out by his aligned super PAC, Never Back Down. At one point, he tried to stop the noise by attempting unsuccessfully to knock the megaphone out of one of the protesters' hands. So there was a bit of chaos. And then, as I say, at least one person was ejected by police. So the politics, the fun continues. What a riot. Now, what's the latest? Well, let's go to this first before we go to the situation in Hawaii. I thought this was very interesting. UK citizens in London, they're furious with Sadiq Khan because he's installing ULEZ or Z, ultra low emission zones, recognition cameras all through the city. So those who can't afford electric vehicles are going to be fined £12 or $15, which is the equivalent in dollars, every time they drive past these sensors, which can detect what kind of vehicle you're driving, I guess, and then they can track your vehicle and send you a bill. So what's going on there is some citizens are fighting back by taking these things down. So here's a guy removing. There goes the sensor. And
See
there's a
what
batch.
one man can do to the ULEZ in less than half a day. Fuck your ULEZ, stick it up your ass, no one wants it, and this is what we'll do every time. I'm calling all people that want to take down these shit cunts. You need is a 10mm socket, yeah, very cheap to buy, to put in your impact drill. They're cheap.
There he goes again. And so much for the 15-minute city. The end. All right, stay with me. When we come back, we'll take a look at what's going on in Hawaii and on Maui with those tragic wildfires. I shall return.
Fear not the storm, for truth is on our side. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back, and what's the situation right now? I want to make sure that I get you the absolute latest information coming out of Hawaii. So we know that at least 93 people have now died in the Maui fires. Officials say the wildfires that erupted on August 8th have become the deadliest natural disaster in state history. That's the way they're referring to it. Fires did spread rapidly, they're saying, because of dry conditions stemming from a drought combined with powerful winds. Much of the town, the historic town of Lahaina, has been completely destroyed, according again to the authorities there. The fires burned thousands of residential and commercial buildings to the ground. And they still have a lot of people missing. And apparently, they've only searched something like 3% of the affected, burned out areas, which means, unfortunately, that in all likelihood, they're going to find many more victims. I am sorry to report to you tonight. It is a very tragic situation. Unprecedented, I would say. And because it is unprecedented, because it is a disaster that has developed on such a large scale, it has affected so many, and so many people have died. I mean, the Canadian wildfires, we're not seeing a death toll like that. Not anything like that. A lot of trees burned, but not this kind of destruction. And bad situation in Canada too. But this is a different. This is just a little bit different, just because of the way the island is, and it's very sad. It's also leading to a lot of speculation about what may have caused this. And I'm sure that a lot of you tonight are well aware of the various theories that are being thrown out there. So I'll just, I'll acknowledge it. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think we know exactly what caused these things. Some people say they do know. I don't know how you speak with such authority unless you've actually seen it. If you've got evidence, I'm not sure that the videos I'm watching are actual evidence or if they're fabrications. But here's this lady, and you can take from it what you will. I'll share it with you. Direct energy weapons or something else? Well, this is what's being reported on Twitter. Here we go.
For the last 4 days. I have been trapped in Lahaina for the last 4 days. and I experienced firsthand what was going on there. What I went through is not important. I need to get this message out. This was not a natural disaster. This was a direct energy attack on the people and the place of Maui. If you know what lives there, what descendants live there, you know why. And you know why it happened on 8/8. And if this is not something that you believe, it's time to stop being a sheep. They came in and they took control. There were trees standing and the buildings gone. This system, this weather system, came in from the mountains, from the east. That does not happen. They were not telling people anything. They were not letting people in to help. And they were letting people go in to get burned alive. There were people burning alive in the streets. There were people dead in the water. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of people that died. What they're telling you in the news is not true, and I lived it firsthand. I sat with the people. This is not to bring fear. This is to educate, because there is darkness that's being hidden. And soon people are going to see. I know now why Gaia sent me there. And I am going to use this platform. There was no warning. There was no nothing. Please boost this post. I want everybody to see this. I don't give a fuck about me. I want everybody to see this. What they're telling you in the news is not what happened.
Show me. That's what I say. A lot of claims there. I've been hearing stuff like this. Show me. You say thousands of people have died? Shouldn't be difficult to show me. Show me. Show me the thousands of people who died. Thousands. Even hundreds. Show me hundreds. I don't know where this is going. I don't know how many people have died. We've just told you that 3% of the area has been searched so far, according to the information that has been released. We know that over 90 people have been confirmed dead. That's true, for sure. You say thousands? Show me. You say that the weather system never comes from that direction, ever? Never? Never. Don't live there. Can't say for sure. You sure you're not just looking for clicks? I don't know. I question everything, including that. I don't know what caused the fires. I don't know. Direct energy weapon? Is that what caused the fires? If you're going to make a claim like that, I say prove it. I'm seeing videos like this one. This seems to be, the new thing. This is what some people are saying it was. I'm sharing it with you tonight. We can consider it. I'm not convinced, but I'm looking at it. I don't know what caused these fires. Unusual? Oh, yeah, to say the least. Were they set intentionally? I don't know. May very well be the case. I don't know. I have no way of knowing. But there is this. Here's a video of someone suggesting that this is a direct energy weapon. This is supposed to be the proof, I guess. I'm going to slow it down so we can look at this. This is 1/4 speed. Let's back it up. Take another look. Back it up again, look at it. I'll try to freeze it on that frame, that flash right there. Let me make it full screen for you. Really? That's supposed to be a direct energy weapon that started these fires? In a flash? Look at the width of that beam. What would fire a beam that wide? That's off in the distance. So from one side to the other, how wide would you say that is? What's the scale? That's huge. That's huge. And could someone create that in a video program? Very easily. I could create that in my video program in a matter of minutes. I could create something that look very similar to that. I'm very skeptical of that because the direct energy weapons that I know of don't have a beam that looks like that. Nothing like that at all. No. You're free to believe what you want, and I'm not discounting the possibility that maybe some sort of a weapon was used, or maybe this fire was set intentionally. It might even be an act of terrorism of some kind that got all this going. I'm not sure. But this particular video and some other videos I've seen like it, I'm extremely skeptical. A lot of people out there looking for clicks, They have their accounts monetized. You put the information like this out there, and I know that these kinds of videos are generating huge responses. But I will say this to anybody out there that is fabricating material like this, shame on you. If you're out there creating videos like this that are not real and you are screwing with people's heads, shame on you. This is a real tragedy. Real people have died. The people there need help. We need truth so that we can figure out what really did happen to hopefully prevent it from ever happening again, whatever that truth is. And the last thing we need is a bunch of click seekers and media whores fabricating videos to generate a social media response and profit from it. Or making videos where they're telling tales that are exaggerations. And there is a lot of that going on these days. And I'm not saying that, some of these things might not be possible, but, you prove it to me. That looks fake as F to me. Yeah, I'm sorry, it just does. You make a little flash of light on a video editing program. There it is right there. Come on. Seriously? Not buying that one, but I'm open to being proven wrong. Fake as F. And this woman, too, I'm not sure about her story. Thousands of dead? Thousands? Well, you've seen it. Show me. Where is it? Where is it? You make this claim, you're telling people, you want to get the word out. Show me. Don't just say it. Show me. These direct energy weapons that they are referring to, they're real. They're in development. The military industrial complex, they're investing heavily in this kind of technology. And a lot of it is because of drones. As we've seen in Ukraine, it has largely been a war of drones for surveillance and for attacks. They're low cost weapons that can take out high value assets. These aquatic drones, for a few $1,000s, you can take out a $500 million ship. The aerial drones also, very low cost weapon and yet very accurate because of GPS. Just navigate in, set your coordinates, and away you go. And you can take out weapon systems that are cost much, much more with a low-cost drone. That's why they are developing these high-energy laser systems. It's my understanding that the newest systems, a single shot with one of these lasers costs only like $1. And as long as you have power, you can keep rejuvenating them because the newest systems don't use chemicals like the older systems did. So they're becoming more sophisticated, more compact, and more viable. They're used, I think, to some degree on aircraft and also on ships. So how do they work? What do they look like? Well, here's a video from Lockheed Martin. It lays out really for you exactly what their system, how it works, what it looks like. It'll give you also an indication of why I think that beam that we saw in that TikTok video is a fabrication, because it doesn't look like that. These direct energy weapons don't look like that. Here we go. Take a look at this. Let me get it up on the screen. Let's watch this. Let's educate ourselves.
Lockheed Martin produces systems that do everything from detect the threats to identify the threats, determine whether it's a threat to the aircraft, and then employs the appropriate weapon, in this case, a laser weapon system.
What we're hearing from our customers is that they need a layered, multi-domain defensive approach that can be integrated across platforms to neutralize these threats across all those domains. Imagine an aircraft equipped with a laser system with the capability to be able to neutralize a threat at the speed of a lightning strike, the precision of a surgical scalpel, with the magazine to deal with a swarm, and with the scalable effect to be able to address that threat, providing an effect all the way the one end from simply deterring it for a short period of time, all the way up to completely neutralizing and defeating that threat.
We are able to integrate our laser weapon system, Athena, into the classified C2 network and receive cues from the radar on the range in order to execute the full kill chain.
The Helios laser weapon system builds on 40 years of combat system engineering and radar excellence. That is a fundamental change for laser weapon systems, which here to date have been prototypes added to a ship. Helios will be integrated into the ship.
So what's exciting about this technology is that it's scalable. It's lived in the laboratory for many years, but has finally reached the power levels and the effectiveness to allow it to be used on the battlefield. As an example, today's laser weapon systems can be used to defeat rockets, artillery, mortars, and even small UAVs. And as that technology and capability scales, the effectiveness scales with it. We'll be to the point here shortly where we'll be able to defend aircraft against incoming missiles and even reach out over long distances and destroy ballistic missile threats.
Laser weapon systems are earning their way onto the battlefield. Lockheed Martin advancements in the fundamental subsystems, be it beam control, high energy laser, beam direction, power, and thermal, is bringing a system-of-system approach to our customers' most challenging problem. Lockheed Martin can bring that end-to-end capability into the theater for the life of our platforms and help defend the brave women and men who boldly go in harm's way to defend our freedoms.
So that's the Lockheed Martin promo video on that. Here's another one. Let me bring this one up. Let's take a look at this one. And note the width of those beams. The point being, these are precision weapons designed to take out targets in a very precise way. Not to say you couldn't start fires with them if you wanted to, but that video that we just saw on TikTok, that beam, that had to be at least a mile wide. That was way off in the distance, miles and miles away. And yet on a scale, if you scale it, if you think about scale in a map, well, scale in an image, objects that are closer appear to be larger, objects that are further away appear to be smaller. That's the rule of optics. So given that that beam was hitting the ground clearly miles and miles away, off in the distance on the horizon, to have it take up that much of the image on your screen, that had to be probably a mile, maybe 2 miles wide. A beam that wide? That's fake as F. They made it that wide so that the flash would be prominent when you're watching it on TikTok and it flashes, and then they can freeze it and say, oh, see, there it is. I'm sorry. That's my assessment of it as a professional video editor, producer, a guy who knows a little bit about even special effects and the way After Effects can be used in the Adobe suite and other effects programs that I've used. That was simplistic, crude, actually, and fake as F. Whoever made that, I'm sorry, but I'm calling you out on it. That ain't real. You look at that video from Lockheed Martin, those beams, yeah, they're visible and you can maybe see them, but they are not a mile wide coming from any of those weapon systems. They're designed to precisely take out a target, like an aircraft or a drone or a missile or some other object in a very precise manner. It could be something on the ground, but it's not meant to, the beams are not a mile or 2 miles wide coming out of those systems. Now, if somebody else knows of another system and you want to send me a video, I'm open to that too. I want to get to the truth of this. And there's no question that these fires in Hawaii, even the ones in Canada and all over the place, they seem very unusual to me. And I don't know how these things started. Obviously, we've shown you the stats. Fires like these are over half every year in Canada, about 60%, actually, almost 60%, are started intentionally by human beings for various reasons. And this could be any kind of, even a political activist. We know that, and I can bring up, and there's been a lot of research on this, where other countries have looked at using wildfires as a way to, terrorist groups have taken a look at this, including, I think it's even Al Qaeda had issued documents about possibly using wildfires at some point. So, and it's been acknowledged as a real threat in North America, but our governments have really done very little, if anything, to mitigate that kind of risk. But we don't know right now what caused these fires. In some cases in Canada, I know the investigations have resulted in some conclusions on how some of them started, but we don't have definitive answers on all of these. And in Hawaii, I think we still need some more time for an assessment to be done in a realistic way. Here's this other video now from Lockheed Martin. I believe this is a different one. Here we go.
Well, today I'm standing out here with the laser defense system behind me at White Sands Missile Range, and we are demonstrating a significant advancement in the capabilities of laser weapon systems against threats that are of interest to all of our war fighters. So in partnership with the Office of Naval Research, ONR, we have demonstrated the capability of negating a surrogate cruise missile in flight with our compact laser weapon system.
Laser's on. I will kill until we're on. Track looks good. All right, here we go. Fine.
It's not a mile wide.
In today's event, it's the first time that a modern fiber laser weapon system with adaptive optics was able to negate a cruise missile. I'm really proud of the team, and we had a multi-VA team that had to work long hours over significant periods of time, and today's results show perfectly how well we performed.
So I know that they're looking at combining that kind of technology with artificial intelligence in order to, really accurately target drones, aircraft, other targets, other military assets, or whatever that is they want to shoot down. And I'm quite certain that other countries, including Russia, probably, and China, have laser technology as well, direct energy weapons of various kinds. But you can see that beam is not a mile wide, or maybe 2 miles wide, coming out of that weapon. And even if it was coming from, say, a satellite or an aircraft, I don't care what platform it might have come from to create a beam a mile or 2 miles wide. You would have to disperse more in a bell system. It's just not, they don't work that way. Not from anything I know about, and nothing I've been able to research in the last few days as I've been looking at this, because people keep sending me this stuff. But of course, that's the nature of social media right now, And it's also the nature of misinformation, malinformation, disinformation. The government engages in it too, and I'm not saying that the government is telling us all the truth either. We need to get to the truth, though, if we can, but that video, that wasn't it. I'm not even sure about that video of that woman, but And these laser weapons, I'm going to play you, a clip from Ronald Reagan. Back, when Reagan was in office, he wanted to initiate the Star Wars program, which was to create laser weapon systems like that to take out intercontinental ballistic missiles. And he wanted to share that technology with the Russians at the time so that it would just neutralize the nuclear threat, so that neither side would be able to successfully use nuclear weapons, thereby neutralizing all of the ballistic missiles on both sides. And then we would no longer have that threat. It was an effort that never came to fruition. It essentially failed, but just to give you an idea of if you weren't alive then, or maybe you don't remember, it was a very real thing. And this is really where that phrase Ronnie Ray gun came from. It was because he embraced this idea. And here's his speech, his Star Wars speech. I'll share it with you here tonight. Ronald Reagan and his famous Star Wars speech.
My fellow Americans, thank you for sharing your time with me tonight. The subject I want to discuss with you, peace and national security, is both timely and important. Timely because I've reached a decision which offers a new hope for our children in the 21st century, a decision I'll tell you about in a few minutes. And important because there's a very big decision that you must make for yourselves. This subject involves the most basic duty that any president and any people share, the duty to protect and strengthen the peace. At the beginning of this year, I submitted to the Congress a defense budget which reflects my best judgment and the best understanding of the experts and specialists who advise me about what we and our allies must do to protect our people in the years ahead. That budget is much more than a long list of numbers, but behind all the numbers lies America's ability to prevent the greatest of human tragedies and preserve our free way of life in a sometimes dangerous world. It is part of a careful long-term plan to make America strong again after too many years of neglect and mistakes. Our efforts to rebuild America's defenses and strengthen the peace began 2 years ago when we requested a major increase in the defense program. Since then, the amount of those increases we first proposed has been reduced by half through improvements in management and procurement and other savings. The budget request that is now before the Congress has been trimmed to the limits of safety. Further deep cuts cannot be made without seriously endangering the security of the nation. The choice is up to the men and women you've elected to the Congress, and that means the choice is up to you. Tonight, I want to explain to you what this defense debate is all about and why I'm convinced that the budget now before the Congress is necessary, responsible, and deserving of your support. And I want to offer hope for the future. But first, let me say what the defense debate is not about. It is not about spending arithmetic. I know that in the last few weeks you've been bombarded with numbers and percentages. Some say we need only a 5% increase in defense spending. The so-called alternate budget backed by liberals in the House of Representatives would lower the figure to 2 to 3%, cutting our defense spending by $163 billion over the next 5 years. The trouble with all these numbers is that they tell us little about the kind of defense program America needs or the benefits and security and freedom that our defense effort buys for us. What seems to have been lost in all this debate is the simple truth of how a defense budget is arrived at. It isn't done by deciding to spend a certain number of dollars. Those loud voices that are occasionally heard charging that the government is trying to solve a security problem by throwing money at it are nothing more than noise based on ignorance. We start by considering what must be done to maintain peace and review all the possible threats against our security. Then, a strategy for strengthening peace and defending against those threats must be agreed upon. And finally, our defense establishment must be evaluated to see what is necessary to protect against any or all of the potential threats. The cost of achieving these ends is totaled up, and the result is the budget for national defense. There is no logical way that you can say, let's spend X billion dollars less. You can only say, which part of our defense measures do we believe we can do without and still have security against all contingencies? Anyone in the Congress who advocates a percentage or a specific dollar cut in defense spending should be made to say what part of our defenses he would eliminate. And he should be candid enough to acknowledge that his cuts mean cutting our commitments to allies or inviting greater risk or both. The defense policy of the United States is based on a simple premise. The United States does not start fights. We will never be an aggressor. We maintain our strength in order to deter and defend against aggression, to preserve freedom and peace. Since the dawn of the atomic age, we've sought to reduce the risk of war by maintaining a strong deterrent and by seeking genuine arms control. Deterrence means simply this: making sure any adversary who thinks about attacking the United States or our allies or our vital interests concludes that the risks to him outweigh any potential gains. Once he understands that, he won't attack. We maintain the peace through our strength. Weakness only invites aggression. This strategy of deterrence has not changed. It still works. But what it takes to maintain deterrence has changed. It took one kind of military force to deter an attack when we had far more nuclear weapons than any other power. It takes another kind now that the Soviets, for example, have enough accurate and powerful nuclear weapons to destroy virtually all of our missiles on the ground. Now, this is not to say that the Soviet Union is planning to make war on us, nor do I believe a war is inevitable. Quite the contrary. But what must be recognized is that our security is based on being prepared to meet all threats. There was a time when we depended on coastal forts and artillery batteries because with the weaponry of that day, any attack would have had to come by sea. Well, this is a different world, and our defenses must be based on recognition and awareness of the weaponry possessed by other nations in the nuclear age. We can't afford to believe that we will never be threatened. There have been 2 world wars in my lifetime. We didn't start them, and indeed did everything we could to avoid being drawn into them. But we were ill prepared for both. Had we been better prepared, peace might have been preserved. For 20 years, the Soviet Union has been accumulating enormous military might. They didn't stop when their forces exceeded all requirements of a legitimate defensive capability, and they haven't stopped now. During the past decade and a half, the Soviets have built up a massive arsenal of new strategic nuclear weapons, weapons that can strike directly at the United States. As an example, the United States introduced its last new intercontinental ballistic missile, the Minuteman III, in 1969. And we're now dismantling our even older Titan missiles. But what has the Soviet Union done in these intervening years? Well, since 1969, the Soviet Union has built 5 new classes of ICBMs and upgraded these 8 times. As a result, their missiles are much more powerful and accurate than they were several years ago, and they continue to develop more while ours are increasingly obsolete. The same thing has happened in other areas. Over the same period, the Soviet Union built 4 new classes of submarine-launched ballistic missiles and over 60 new missile submarines. We built 2 new types of submarine missiles and actually withdrew 10 submarines from strategic missions. The Soviet Union built over 200 new backfire bombers, and their brand new Blackjack bomber is now under development. We haven't built a new long-range bomber since our B-52s were deployed about a quarter of a century ago, and we've already retired several hundred of those because of old age. Indeed, despite what many people think, our strategic forces only cost about 15% of the defense budget. Another example of what's happened. In 1978, the Soviets had 600 intermediate-range nuclear missiles based on land and were beginning to add the SS-20, a new, highly accurate mobile missile with 3 warheads. We had none. Since then, the Soviets have strengthened their lead. By the end of 1979, when Soviet leader Brezhnev declared a balance now exists, the Soviets had over 800 warheads. We still had none. A year ago this month, Mr. Brezhnev pledged a moratorium or freeze on SS-20 deployment. But by last August, their 800 warheads had become more than 1,200. We still had none, some freeze. At this time, Soviet Defense Minister Ustinov announced approximate parity of forces continues to exist, but the Soviets are still adding an average of 3 new warheads a week and now have 1,300. These warheads can reach their targets in a matter of a few minutes. We still have none. So far, it seems that the Soviet definition of parity is a box score of 1,300 to nothing in their favor. So, together with our NATO allies, we decided in 1979 to deploy new weapons beginning this year as a deterrent to their SS-20s and as an incentive to the Soviet Union to meet us in serious arms control negotiations. We will begin that deployment late this year. At the same time, however, we're willing to cancel our program if the Soviets will dismantle theirs. This is what we've called a 0-0 plan. The Soviets are now at the negotiating table, and I think it's fair to say that without our planned deployments, they wouldn't be there. Now let's consider conventional forces. Since 1974, the United States has produced 3,050 tactical combat aircraft. By contrast, the Soviet Union has produced twice as many. When we look at attack submarines, the United States has produced 27, while the Soviet Union has produced 61. For armored vehicles, including tanks, we've produced 11,200. The Soviet Union has produced 54,000, nearly 5 to 1 in their favor. Finally, with artillery, we've produced 950 artillery and rocket launchers, while the Soviets have produced more than 13,000, a staggering 14 to 1 ratio. There was a time when we were able to offset superior Soviet numbers with higher quality. But today, they're building weapons as sophisticated and modern as our own. As the Soviets have increased their military power, they've been emboldened to extend that power. They're spreading their military influence in ways that can directly challenge our vital interests and those of our allies. The following aerial photographs, most of them secret until now, illustrate this point in a crucial area very close to home, Central America and the Caribbean Basin. They're not dramatic photographs, but I think they help give you a better understanding of what I'm talking about. This Soviet intelligence collection facility, less than 100 miles from our coast, is the largest of its kind in the world. The acres and acres of antenna fields and intelligence monitors are targeted on key U.S. military installations and sensitive activities. The installation in Lourdes, Cuba, is manned by 1,500 Soviet technicians, and the satellite ground station allows instant communications with Moscow. This 28 square mile facility has grown by more than 60% in size and capability during the past decade. In Western Cuba, we see this military airfield and its complement of modern Soviet-built MiG-23 aircraft. The Soviet Union uses this Cuban airfield for its own long-range reconnaissance missions, and earlier this month, 2 modern Soviet anti-submarine warfare aircraft began operating from it. During the past 2 years, the level of Soviet arms exports to Cuba can only be compared to the levels reached during the Cuban Missile Crisis 20 years ago. This third photo, which is the only one in this series that has been previously made public, shows Soviet military hardware that has made its way to Central America. This airfield, with its Mi-8 helicopters, anti-aircraft guns, and protected fighter sites, is one of a number of military facilities in Nicaragua, which has received Soviet equipment funneled through Cuba and reflects the massive military buildup going on in that country. On the small island of Grenada, at the southern end of the Caribbean chain, the Cubans, with Soviet financing and backing, are in the process of building an airfield with a 10,000-foot runway. Grenada doesn't even have an air force. Who is it intended for? The Caribbean is a very important passageway for our international commerce and military lines of communication. More than half of all American oil imports now pass through the Caribbean. The rapid buildup of Grenada's military potential is unrelated to any conceivable threat to this island country of under 110,000 people, and totally at odds with the pattern of other Eastern Caribbean states, most of which are unarmed. The Soviet-Cuban militarization of Grenada, in short, can only be seen as power projection into the region, and it is in this important economic and strategic area that we're trying to help the governments of El Salvador, Costa Rica, Honduras, and others in their struggles for democracy against guerrillas supported through Cuba and Nicaragua. These pictures only tell a small part of the story. I wish I could show you more without compromising our most sensitive intelligence sources and methods. But the Soviet Union is also supporting Cuban military forces in Angola and Ethiopia. They have bases in Ethiopia and South Yemen near the Persian Gulf oil fields. They have taken over the port that we built at Cam Ranh Bay in Vietnam. And now, for the first time in history, the Soviet Navy is a force to be reckoned with in the South Pacific. Some people may still ask, would the Soviets ever use their formidable military power? Well, again, can we afford to believe they won't? There is Afghanistan, and in Poland, the Soviets denied the will of the people and in so doing demonstrated to the world how their military power could also be used to intimidate. The final fact is that the Soviet Union is acquiring what can only be considered an offensive military force. They have continued to build far more intercontinental ballistic missiles than they could possibly need simply to deter an attack. Their conventional forces are trained and equipped not so much to defend against an attack as they are to permit sudden surprise offensives of their own. Our NATO allies have assumed a great defense burden, including the military draft in most countries. We're working with them and our other friends around the world to do more. Our defensive strategy means we need military forces that can move very quickly, forces that are trained and ready to respond to any emergency. Every item in our defense program, our ships, our tanks, our planes, our funds for training and spare parts, is intended for one all-important purpose: to keep the peace. Unfortunately, a decade of neglecting our military forces had called into question our ability to do that. When I took office in January 1981, I was appalled by what I found. American planes that couldn't fly and American ships that couldn't sail for lack of spare parts and trained personnel and insufficient fuel and ammunition for essential training. The inevitable result of all this was poor morale in our armed forces, difficulty in recruiting the brightest young Americans to wear the uniform, and difficulty in convincing our most experienced military personnel to stay on. There was a real question then about how well we could meet a crisis, and it was obvious that we had to begin a major modernization program to ensure we could deter aggression and preserve the peace in the years ahead. We had to move immediately to improve the basic readiness and staying power of our conventional forces so they could meet and therefore help deter a crisis. We had to make up for lost years of investment by moving forward with a long-term plan to prepare our forces to counter the military capabilities our adversaries were developing for the future. I know that all of you want peace, and so do I. I know, too, that many of you seriously believe that a nuclear freeze would further the cause of peace. But a freeze now would make us less, not more secure, and would raise, not reduce, the risks of war. It would be largely unverifiable and would seriously undercut our negotiations on arms reduction. It would reward the Soviets for their massive military buildup while preventing us from modernizing our aging and increasingly vulnerable forces. With their present margin of superiority, why should they agree to arms reductions knowing that we were prohibited from catching up? Believe me, it wasn't pleasant for someone who had come to Washington determined to reduce government spending, but we had to move forward with the task of repairing our defenses, or we would lose our ability to deter conflict now and in the future. We had to demonstrate to any adversary that aggression could not succeed, and that the only real solution was substantial, equitable, and effectively verifiable arms reduction, the kind we're working for right now in Geneva. Thanks to your strong support and bipartisan support from the Congress, we began to turn things around. Already, we're seeing some very encouraging results. Quality recruitment and retention are up dramatically. More high school graduates are choosing military careers, and more experienced career personnel are choosing to stay. Our men and women in uniform at last are getting the tools and training they need to do their jobs. Ask around today, especially among our young people, and I think you'll find a whole new attitude towards serving their country. This reflects more than just better pay, equipment, and leadership. You, the American people, have sent a signal to these young people that it is once again an honor to wear the uniform. That's not something you measure in a budget, but it's a very real part of our nation's strength. It'll take us longer to build the kind of equipment we need to keep peace in the future, but we've made a good start. We haven't built a new long-range bomber for 21 years. Now we're building the B-1. We hadn't launched one new strategic submarine for 17 years. Now we're building one Trident submarine a year. Our land-based missiles are increasingly threatened by the many huge new Soviet ICBMs. We're determining how to solve that problem. At the same time, we're working in the START and INF negotiations with a goal of achieving deep reductions in the strategic and intermediate nuclear arsenals of both sides. We have also begun the long-needed modernization of our conventional forces. The Army is getting its first new tank in 20 years. The Air Force is modernizing. We're rebuilding our Navy, which shrank from about 1,000 ships in the late 1960s to 453 during the 1970s. Our nation needs a superior Navy to support our military forces and vital interests overseas. We're now on the road to achieving a 600-ship Navy and increasing the amphibious capabilities of our Marines, who are now serving the cause of peace in Lebanon. And we're building a real capability to assist our friends in the vitally important Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf region. This adds up to a major effort, and it isn't cheap. It comes at a time when there are many other pressures on our budget, and when the American people have already had to make major sacrifices during the recession. But we must not be misled by those who would make defense once again the scapegoat of the federal budget. The fact is that in the past few decades, we have seen a dramatic shift in how we spend the taxpayer's dollar. Back in 1955, payments to individuals took up only about 20% of the federal budget. For nearly 3 decades, these payments steadily increased, and this year will account for 49% of the budget. By contrast, in 1955, defense took up more than half of the federal budget. By 1980, this spending had fallen to a low of 23%. Even with the increase that I am requesting this year, defense will still amount to only 28% of the budget. The calls for cutting back the defense budget come in nice, simple arithmetic. They're the same kind of talk that led the democracies to neglect their defenses in the 1930s and invited the tragedy of World War II. We must not let that grim chapter of history repeat itself through apathy or neglect. This is why I'm speaking to you tonight, to urge you to tell your senators and congressmen that you know we must continue to restore our military strength. If we stop in midstream, we will send a signal of decline, of lessened will, to friends and adversaries alike. Free people must voluntarily, through open debate and democratic means, meet the challenge that totalitarians pose by compulsion. It's up to us in our time to choose and choose wisely between the hard but necessary task of preserving peace and freedom and the temptation to ignore our duty and blindly hope for the best while the enemies of freedom grow stronger day by day. The solution is well within our grasp, but to reach it, there is simply no alternative but to continue this year in this budget to provide the resources we need to preserve the peace and guarantee our freedom. Now, thus far tonight, I've shared with you my thoughts on the problems of national security we must face together. My predecessors in the Oval Office have appeared before you on other occasions to describe the threat posed by Soviet power and to propose steps to address that threat. But since the advent of nuclear weapons, those steps have been increasingly directed toward deterrence of aggression through the promise of retaliation. This approach to stability through offensive threat has worked. We and our allies have succeeded in preventing nuclear war for more than 3 decades. In recent months, however, my advisors, including in particular the Joint Chiefs of Staff, have underscored the necessity to break out of a future that relies solely on offensive retaliation for our security. Over the course of these discussions, I've become more and more deeply convinced that the human spirit must be capable of rising above dealing with other nations and human beings by threatening their existence. Feeling this way, I believe we must thoroughly examine every opportunity for reducing tensions and for introducing greater stability into the strategic calculus on both sides. One of the most important contributions we can make is, of course, to lower the level of all arms, and particularly nuclear arms. We're engaged right now in several negotiations with the Soviet Union to bring about a mutual reduction of weapons. I will report to you a week from tomorrow my thoughts on that score. But let me just say I'm totally committed to this course. If the Soviet Union will join with us in our effort to achieve major arms reduction, we will have succeeded in stabilizing the nuclear balance. Nevertheless, it will still be necessary to rely on the specter of retaliation, on mutual threat. And that's a sad commentary on the human condition. Wouldn't it be better to save lives than to avenge them? Are we not capable of demonstrating our peaceful intentions by applying all our abilities and our ingenuity to achieving a truly lasting stability? I think we are. Indeed, we must. After careful consultation with my advisors, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I believe there is a way. Let me share with you a vision of the future which offers hope. It is that we embark on a program to counter the awesome Soviet missile threat with measures that are defensive. Let us turn to the very strengths in technology that spawned our great industrial base and that have given us the quality of life we enjoy today. What if free people could live secure in the knowledge that their security did not rest upon the threat of instant U.S. retaliation to deter a Soviet attack, that we could intercept and destroy strategic ballistic missiles before they reached our own soil or that of our allies? I know this is a formidable technical task, one that may not be accomplished before the end of this century. Yet current technology has attained a level of sophistication where it's reasonable for us to begin this effort. It will take years, probably decades of effort on many fronts. There will be failures and setbacks, just as there will be successes and breakthroughs. And as we proceed, we must remain constant in preserving the nuclear deterrent and maintaining a solid capability for flexible response. But isn't it worth every investment necessary to free the world from the threat of nuclear war? We know it is. In the meantime, we will continue to pursue real reductions in nuclear arms, negotiating from a position of strength that can be ensured only by modernizing our strategic forces. At the same time, we must take steps to reduce the risk of a conventional military conflict escalating to nuclear war by improving our non-nuclear capabilities. America does possess now the technologies to attain very significant improvements in the effectiveness of our conventional non-nuclear forces. Proceeding boldly with these new technologies, we can significantly reduce any incentive that the Soviet Union may have to threaten attack against the United States or its allies. As we pursue our goal of defensive technologies, we recognize that our allies rely upon our strategic offensive power to deter attacks against them. Their vital interests and ours are inextricably linked. Their safety and ours are one, and no change in technology can or will alter that reality. We must and shall continue to honor our commitments. I clearly recognize that defensive systems have limitations and raise certain problems and ambiguities. If paired with offensive systems, they can be viewed as fostering an aggressive policy, and no one wants that. But with these considerations firmly in mind, I call upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete. Tonight, consistent with our obligations under the ABM Treaty and recognizing the need for closer consultation with our allies, I'm taking an important first step. I am directing a comprehensive and intensive effort to define a long-term research and development program to begin to achieve our ultimate goal of eliminating the threat posed by strategic nuclear missiles. This could pave the way for arms control measures to eliminate the weapons themselves. We seek neither military superiority nor political advantage. Our only purpose, one all people share, is to search for ways to reduce the danger of nuclear war. My fellow Americans, tonight we're launching an effort which holds the promise of changing the course of human history. There will be risks and results take time, but I believe we can do it. As we cross this threshold, I ask for your prayers and your support. Thank you. Good night, and God bless you.
And that's what laid the foundation for the Star Wars Defense Initiative. And from that came this television commercial. And I'm also going to show you another possible cause of those wildfires in Hawaii after we show you this. Here we go. I remember this when I was much younger. Back in the 80s, this was the Reagan Star Wars Defense Shield, the SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative advertisement.
I asked my daddy what this Star Wars stuff is all about. He said that right now we can't protect ourselves from nuclear weapons. And that's why the president wants to build the Peace Shield. It would stop missiles in outer space so they couldn't hit our house. Then nobody could win a war. And if nobody could win a war, there's no reason to start one.
And that was a very simplistic way to deliver the message, sell the message. That was in the 1980s. Oh, information warfare was being waged. Marketing, politics. And that's why I take everything that I see on social media with a grain of salt and a heavy dose of skepticism. Question everything, including what we saw earlier tonight. And I can show you this as another possible cause of the wildfires in Hawaii. And this seems honestly quite viable to me, quite possible, because we are seeing now a class action lawsuit filed in Hawaii alleging that 4 power companies in the state ignored weather warnings for gusty winds and high fire danger and kept power lines energized. Alleging energized lines led to the deadly Maui fire that swept through the Lahaina area and the Lahaina town. So, class action lawsuit, people saying that these fires may have been started by energized power lines sparking and possibly coming down and igniting these fires. And so I guess that when the winds hit a certain level, these power lines are supposed to be de-energized, but the lawsuit alleges that did not happen. So that is a major development tonight as well. And that's a real thing. Like that, that's a real class action lawsuit. So you can take that one to the bank and see where that goes. But there's truth in the fact that there's an actual lawsuit. And so they must have actual evidence. And there will be disclosure. So when that evidence comes up, we'll be able to look at it and see if that is one of, maybe there's more than one cause. I don't know. But that seems like a very real possibility. And they'll have to back that up with facts, with actual evidence, and they will have to show us and prove it in court in order for that lawsuit to be successful. And those lawyers and the people involved must have a high level of confidence if they're taking it to court. So I would say that's a very viable scenario. Now, beyond that, I know that the speculation on social media will continue, that the heavy clicks will continue, no doubt about it. And we can continue to look at all possibilities in the days ahead. We will continue to keep our mind open and our eyes open and our ears open. And I'm open to all kinds of different information, facts, evidence, as we pursue the truth here on the Maverick News Channel. That is what we are all about, really. Free speech, free media, the pursuit of truth. And while truth is elusive, we will certainly do our best to get you closer to it every single day that we are on the air here. That being said, you can support this channel if you like what we're doing by donating at freedomreporters.com. That'll take you straight to a PayPal page, and you can donate through there if you are so inclined. You can also donate at maverickdonations.com. That takes you to the Give, Send, Go page. You can donate through the Rumble Rants on the Rumble channel. If you haven't subscribed on Rumble, please consider doing that. Also, please consider subscribing even over on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, like, and share on Facebook if you have been watching there. We're not on all the Facebook pages that we had. Our Facebook Maverick News page has been rendered impotent, as Ronald Reagan just said there in his Star Wars speech. That was a historic speech, and I hope that you found some value in watching that with me here tonight. That is why I think Ronald Reagan, among conservatives in America, is viewed as, perhaps the greatest president ever, one of the strongest leaders America ever had. And that's because during a speech like that, he left people with a sense of hope. Whether that was realistic or maybe an illusion at the time, through the 80s, people certainly were much more patriotic and filled with hope at the time. That was the mark of a strong leader. That was Ronald Reagan. And I think we could all use a little bit more hope around the world tonight. And I hope that the message that we facilitated here by sharing the messages from various political leaders on the American side tonight, whether it was Trump or DeSantis, who couldn't get a word in edgewise because of the cowbells, the whistles, and the heckling, or RFK Jr. and his call for peace, or Ronald Reagan, the voice from the past, also calling for peace in his own way. Something I also long for, and I hope that we can promote here using this platform by pursuing truth. I'm not sure if I'll be back tomorrow night. I have some family obligations that I need to attend to, and I'm not sure if I will be able to broadcast tomorrow night here on this platform. If I'm not here, and I will try to be, but if I'm not here, we will certainly be back on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everyone, for joining me here on Maverick News again tonight. Thank you, Maverick family. As always, a privilege to have you with me and for you to allow me into your homes or wherever you may be watching around the world. Catch you all on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.